let's follow on over, staying in California to Los Angeles, where we're going to go over the Los Angeles Rams. They went 10-7 last season, lost in the wild card to the Detroit Lions. I remember that was a fun game. In terms of departures, not too many there's only one real big one of note, but I'll get to that in a second. So lost quarterback Carson Wentz and center Coleman Shelton on offense. I think Coleman Shelton was their mainstay starter, so that could be a concern. But obviously the big one is on defense, losing defensive tackle Aaron Donald. I mean, that's no way they're going to be able to replace him alone. And then obviously another piece in cornerback Kelly Witherspoon, who once again took a bunch of snaps for them, and they lost defensive coordinator Raheem Morris. Obviously, Morris went to Atlanta. And in terms of additions, they brought in quarterback Jimmy Garoppolo. Important to note, he's suspended. I think is it at least for the first game, right, or first couple of games for PED use.
I forget the first couple, but I can't remember exactly, so don't quote me on that.
So hopefully, they don't have to throw in Stetson Bennett because it's not been good preseason for Stetson Bennett, and it's preseason. Anyway. They also grabbed guard Jonah Jackson from the Lions to strengthen that O-line. Then defensively, they went and grabbed cornerbacks Tre'Davious White and also brought back Darius Williams, who was previously with them and went to the Jacksonville for about a year or two. Now it's back. And then also brought in safety Cameron Curl. And then in terms of draft, they drafted mainly on defense. Really loved Florida State as they spent their first 2-round picks on Florida State players. First off, in the first round being edge rusher Jared Verse, and then defensive lineman Braden Fisk in the second, and then also grabbed running back Blake Corum out of Michigan in the third round. I will note too, I think I forget what round he's in, but wide receiver Durham Winnington's been playing really good for them in preseason, so maybe he can be an impact guy for them as well. But John, what are your thoughts here on the Rams? Obviously, big shoes to fill in regards to losing Aaron Donald, and also, who knows how the defense will be with Raheem Morris without him, So, any thoughts, concerns in regards to the Rams going into the 2024 season?
I'll start with the draft. I liked it. I mean, you lose a guy like Aaron Donald, you got to start addressing the defense. So I liked that they went out and they got Jared Verse, specifically in the first round. Then you get Braden Fisk. I liked those two additions because I felt like Florida State had a hell of a defense. And I think that both of those guys already having sort of, established chemistry can maybe help you wreak some havoc on the defensive line. But that said, the overall defense, it doesn't look great. Obviously, the Rams defense have kind of always pulled it together, but that was always around the fact that they have Aaron frickin' Donald, arguably the best player in the NFL for, the last handful of years. So he was a true game changer, a true game wrecker, and, has that sort of elite quarterback effect where it's like, okay, we don't have great receivers. Maybe the line's not as good as we would hope for. Maybe we don't have, highly drafted running backs that are getting paid a ton of money, but we've got this quarterback who can kind of overcome all that and make our offense go. That's what Aaron Donald was for this defense, to where even if they didn't have, great defensive line, the linebackers were never that impressive, the secondary wasn't, all that, they still have Aaron Donald, and he can just, make up for so much of the mistakes and just be such a game changer that they have to devote so many resources to just trying to stop him, that it can allow the other players who maybe aren't as good to get some more favorable matchups. That's not going to be happening anymore. You're not going to be having Aaron Donald getting triple teamed in certain games. So I think that puts a lot of pressure on all of these kind of young edge rushers, young defensive linemen to step up and, kind of finally come into their own, whether that's Ernest Jones, Bobby Brown at nose tackle, Braden Fisk, and, Jared Verse, who they just drafted. These kind of guys are going to have to really step up and start to kind of fill these voids, because we just don't know what we're going to be getting out of these kind of guys. So I'll be interested to see how this defense looks. They did have some pieces last year that have kind of flashed. And I will say, their safety room is decent with Cameron Curl and John Johnson, but overall, I'm not feeling too confident in what I'm looking at in terms of the Rams defense. And then on the offensive side of the ball, obviously the strength is that receiver room with Cooper Kupp, Puka Nacua. Like you said, Jordan Whittington's been really good in the offseason. DeMarcus Robinson has been solid ever since his days with the Chiefs. At running back, you got Kyron Williams, who is great. I like the Blake Corum addition. I know that some people might be like, well, you already have Kyron, so what's the point of wasting a third-round pick? In the modern day NFL, we've talked about it many times on this pod. Having multiple options at running back is never a bad thing, because not only does it, add a bit more, dynamic of a punch to your backfield, but it can allow the guy who's the top guy to, stay a little bit more healthy throughout the season, because the seasons just continue to get longer as they add games, and it's important if you're going to have a guy like Kyron Williams, late in the season and in the playoffs. So that's interesting. The one thing that still stands out to me with the Rams is the depth at quarterback. Obviously, you've got Stafford. He's great, but he is getting a little bit older. We have seen him struggle with injuries at different points. Last year he was healthy, but the year before there were some injuries there. And behind him, you've got Jimmy Garoppolo, who did not look great last year. Devontae Adams was demanding him to get benched. And all reports that I've heard are that he has not had a great offseason. And then you got Stetson Bennett, who, my opinions on him, like the definition of wins are not a QB stat. I mean, the Cowboys in their preseason game intercepted him 4 times. So I'll be honest, I don't even know why he's on an NFL team. So I don't love the depth behind Stafford in the case that an injury was to occur. But quite frankly, even if an injury was to occur and they had a decent backup, the Rams would probably be done anyway, just because of how reliant they are on very specific stars. So I don't know. I don't think the Rams will be bad, because assuming that Stafford and that offense are healthy, they can still move the ball pretty well, and McVay is still one of the top offensive coaches. So you've still got that, but I do think this is going to maybe be a season where they're going to have to start outscoring some people, or some of these young defensive guys are going to have to step up and make a name for themselves pretty quick here, because the Rams defense does not instill a lot of confidence in me.
Yeah, and I completely agree in regards to that. That was going to be my concern. I mean, and no offense to Tre'Davious White, but it feels like more of like a gambit. Like, oh man, like,
yeah,
we really like bringing back Darius Williams, who was solid for them, but maybe at best a good number 2 if he has a great number 1. And like you said, though, it's going to be interesting to see the trickle-down effect now that there's no Aaron Donald, because I just want to add on, like you said, makes life easier for the rest of the defense in terms of also making life harder for the offense, like you alluded to. Like, like you said, when there's 2-3 offensive linemen, or teams are literally scheming their protections or run game around, we need to get multiple bodies in Aaron Donald. Now, they may not have to do that. Stresses out the linebackers more, which, especially that could be a concern. No offense to Ernest Jones and Christian Roseboom, who are the projected starters, but then also even on the edge, like Jared Verse is a rookie, so who knows what impact he will have. And if I believe I saw, he hasn't had much playing time in the preseason, if any. And then Byron Young in his second year too, so another young guy you're turning on. I know Kobe Turner had a really good year last year, but like we've been alluding to, is it going to be the same with Aaron Donald? Now that, if anything, teams are focusing on taking him out of games in terms of, the interior of the line. So, yeah, major concerns. And even then, even the safeties, not to prove what you're saying, but like John Johnson, they brought him back, and he had been let go as well. So, yeah, like you alluded to, this could be a year where they're going to have to, like I said, outscore teams, because I do like their O-line, which was like weakness going into last year, but Kevin Dotson was a solid find by the organization. He's been solid. And then their center they drafted last year, Steve Avila, was very solid. And obviously bringing Jonah Jackson, who was pretty good with the Lions, just was occasionally banged up. Obviously, that'll help with their run game. And yeah, like you said, Blake Corum, nice Kyron Williams insurance, because Kyron did have a good year last year, but missed 4 games, and also a smaller back, even though he's not that quick either. But nonetheless, still really good. But the point continues, like John said, where running backs, it's a war of attrition really for them throughout the season. It's the reason why, you look at the other successful teams throughout this past decade, especially like the Patriots. I know with Belichick, always had a stable room of running backs, because even Belichick knew like linebackers, they're going to wear down as the year goes on. It's always good to have a stable there. And even the Chiefs, I know they kind of rode Pacheco this last run, but even before that, they had a mixture of, it was Pacheco, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, and Jerick McKinnon, like a mixture of guys to do different things or take the load that specific day. So, be interesting to see. Hopefully Stafford can stay healthy, because if not, like you said, it feels like it would be season done. But On the bright side, if that does happen, don't worry, knocking on wood for you LA Rams fans and also as Cooper Cup owner. If it goes south, you at least have your picks now going for it. I know they had it last season, but still, at least that's good in terms of that little silver lining. But yeah, on the last note too, will be interesting to see if Cooper Cup can bounce back after having, I guess, a down year last year. I know he's dealing with that hamstring injury that got him right at the beginning of the season, and by all accounts, like apparently he was trying to play through it, and he just wasn't the same guy. So hopefully he can bounce back, because if he can, it'll be a dangerous combo with him, Nakua, and maybe one of these other receivers like we mentioned can step up as well, even if maybe Cup is not up to his old standard. But yeah, so we'll see how it goes for the LA Rams, but they're expecting a good little bounce back after getting back into the playoff picture last year. That's where we're going to move on